and respected by her church, her family, and her work colleagues.
She was well known for her real estate business.
Her husband was an elder with the church, highly respected Jehovah's Witness.
They're viewed as the perfect family.
Until a cacophony of violence and bloodshed pierced an otherwise peaceful spring evening.
The victim was found deceased in his vehicle with multiple gunshots.
Why would you shoot somebody that many times in the face? Unless it's vengeance.
When investigators dig in, they uncover dark secrets.
Her husband and his wife were acting like dogs, and they were having this affair.
He said he's gonna kill me.
But who is really behind this horrific crime?
He is a younger guy. He was a member of the church.
I was just in shock.
They had to flee the country.
They had the perfect life, and it was all ruined.
Little Rock, California, a small town northeast of LA in picturesque Antelope Valley. Just after 8 p.m., a call comes in to the Los Angeles County 911 dispatch center. On the line is 38-year-old Kareem Aleskis.
I call 911, and I have the 911 person on the line, and I'm telling them, I think my husband got shot.
Kareem tells the operator that she'd gone looking for her husband, 46-year-old Miguel Romero, when he didn't come home after a work delivery.
He had an order placed, so he went to go make that delivery. It was at 5 or 5:30, close to around 7 o'clock. It's starting to get dark, so I decided to go out, look for him.
Kareem says she ultimately found Miguel sitting unconscious in his truck on a deserted back road just outside of town.
They're trying to get my location. I'm in the middle of literally nowhere.
It's not the type of area that you can just punch into your phone or GPS, and it takes you there. It's rural dirt roads that are not marked.
The operator keeps Kareem on the line. Eventually, first responders locate her.
I saw the sirens coming. I told her, I already see the police car coming towards me. And she's like, yeah, just stay put. They're coming to you.
Kareem directs patrol officers toward her husband. They search for a pulse, but there's none to be found.
The victim was deceased in his vehicle with multiple gunshots to his upper body.
Homicide detectives arrive at the scene. After searching Miguel's body, they quickly zero in on a possible motive.
There was no contents in his pants. His wallet was missing, his cell phone was missing, and there was no cash.
The fact that his wallet and cell phone were missing was an indicator that it was possibly a robbery.
But the brutality of the crime is also a red flag.
The gunshots to the face, there were several of them. I think there was a total of 7. Why would you shoot somebody that many times in the face? Unless it's some personal agenda or vengeance.
Miguel Romero spent the first part of his life far from the rural ranches and dirt roads of Antelope Valley.
He grew up in El Salvador, and then he was brought here in his late teens. So from the late teens to the late 20s, he was in South Central.
In 1998, at a nightclub in LA, Miguel met a 21-year-old Guatemalan native named Kareem Aleskis.
We, danced that night, and then we started talking, and a little bit after, we started going out.
After dating for a year, Kareem and Miguel moved into an apartment together. By 2006, they were married with 3 daughters and had moved from the hustle and bustle of LA in order to raise their girls in the wide open spaces of Antelope Valley.
When we came around to look for houses, his mentality was looking for a house with a big yard, because eventually he wanted to grow animals, and that's the kind of life that he wanted it to have.
It was almost an acre lot. So in the back, they had their horses and goats and chickens and the whole 9 yards.
Miguel was a dedicated father to Jaylene, Kelsey, and Mary, his oldest daughter from a previous relationship.
He taught me how to feed animals. I knew every single time I came over his house, I was feeding chickens or give the horses baths.
He will always take the girls, to ride the horses. So he will always try to, teach them.
When it came to providing for his family, Miguel worked as a handyman, but was always on the lookout for new opportunities.
He had a lot of ideas. He always wanted to experience a lot of things. So he will always be trying to do new things.
In 2009, Miguel and Kareem met a local realtor, 35-year-old Ana Mancio, through his brother-in-law, Raul.
The Mancios started coming to our house more often. Then we started inviting them to our family gatherings. That's where everyone met them.
The Romeros and the Mancios became fast friends.
She was from Guatemala as well. Her husband was from Guatemala. So having that in common led to us having some kind of a relationship.
Anna and her husband Edwin had 2 daughters of their own, Tamra and Scarlett. Anna was a tough but loving mother.
Anna is just kind of a matter-of-fact type person, not real friendly, but good with her daughters, really good with her kids.
For most of their marriage, Edwin earned a living as a mechanic, while Anna worked as a certified loan agent. But the couple always believed their real work was in the church.
Edwin Mancio was an elder with the church, highly respected Jehovah's Witness.
You're an elder. You're a very respected family. You're kind of like the perfect family.
They had the perfect life here in the Antelope Valley. It was beautiful here. They had a beautiful home.
The Romeros and Mancios' lives became even more entwined after Anna obtained her real estate license and looked to Miguel as her go-to handyman.
Anna and him had in common a lot of things when it comes to business.
She started going into asking Miguel to come and do, little repairs here and there.
By the nature of the kind of work that they were doing and Miguel's ability to help, that gave him a lot of time to spend with each other.
Miguel also started doing business with Anna's husband, Edwin.
He was buying cattle and pigs, and they will sell the meat.
In 2013, Miguel took on yet another endeavor.
He started selling food for animals, roll corn, chicken scratch, different animal foods.
He started off selling to the neighbors and selling small portions, and his goal eventually was to try to make something bigger.
On the night of April 28, 2015, Miguel's big dreams came to a sudden halt when his wife Kareem discovered him lifeless in the cab of his truck on a dark, isolated dirt road.
We don't know the victim. We don't know what he's involved in. We don't know anything really about them.
What investigators do know is that whoever killed Miguel showed no mercy.
When somebody's shot multiple times like that, specifically in the head, it could be of personal nature, maybe a crime of passion.
Coming up, detectives question Miguel's wife.
How did she find him out there? Why is she out here in the middle of the desert?
And a witness steps forward with what could be a crucial clue.
I recall him saying anybody that's there is either lost or doesn't.
2015, 46-year-old El Salvador native Miguel Romero had become a respected, prosperous member of California.
He was a really hard worker. He would always want to do better, never settle.
Then, on April 28th, Miguel's wife Kareem discovered him dead with bullet wounds to the face and head on a rural road just outside the town of Little Rock.
I was in shock because I couldn't believe this had happened.
Homicide detectives and first responders had a difficult time locating the rural crime scene when Kareem called 911. So they want to know what led Kareem to this remote location.
How did she know where he was at? Why is she out here in the middle of the desert finding her husband shot?
Kareem explains that earlier in the day, Miguel had told her that he had a feed delivery to make that evening.
He had an order placed for him to deliver quite an amount of food, but he told me that he needed to look up the address. So I did.
He didn't recognize the area or the phone number, so Kareem looked it up on the computer, and she was able to tell him how to get to the area where the delivery needed to be made.
His appointment to go make that delivery was at 5:30, I think. He received a text saying, "Are you still coming?" And he told me to reply to that text, "Yes, I'll be leaving the house at 5 o'clock."
According to Kareem, Miguel left on schedule. But when several hours passed and he hadn't returned home, Kareem began to worry.
He had left the horse tied in the tree, resting. And I texted him, asking him, do you want me to put the horse in the corral? And he didn't reply. And my husband always replied and always answered his phone.
That raised her concern, and she continually tried to get a hold of him.
I told the girls, you know what? I think the truck might have, broke down because your dad is not answering. Maybe he's in an area where he's not getting a signal or something. So I'm gonna go out, look for him. So I left, and I went the same way that he had discussed how he was gonna get to that area.
Kareem tells police that around 8 p.m., she arrived at the location where the food drop was supposed to occur. That's when she saw Miguel's truck.
I got out of the car and I walked towards the truck, and I'm approaching the driver's seat, and his window is down. He was laying towards the passenger side. I noticed that he had a wound on his forehead. That's the only thing that at that time I noticed. My first reaction was to pull him, towards me, try touching his face. And as I try to pull him, his body will just go towards the side again.
As she tells her story, Kareem grows increasingly upset. Detectives decide it's time to put a stop to the questioning, for now.
We thought it would be best to get her in a more comfortable surrounding, and she was transported to the Palmdale Sheriff Station.
With Kareem on her way to the station, detectives take a closer look at the crime scene.
There was a couple expended shell casings on the outside of the truck and bullet holes through the windshield and the back window.
The shell casings appear to be from a 9mm pistol, and from the looks of it, whoever fired the gun fired from close range.
It appeared as though it was someone that came up on the driver's side of the car and shot into the car.
The bullet trajectory was upward, indicating that the firearm was lower than Miguel's head and face.
They were either in a car that pulled up next to him that was lower than his, or maybe somebody that snuck up on him and was hiding behind the actual door below the window.
Instead of meeting with Miguel in order to buy animal feed, had the shooter simply lured Miguel out here under false pretenses in order to rob him? Detectives have their doubts.
Typically, in a robbery, the suspect or the assailant will shoot 1 or 2 times just to incapacitate the victim and then quickly get away.
The fact that he was shot so many times kind of led us to believe that it may have been somebody he knew.
It appeared staged in order to look like a robbery.
Who would go to such extremes to kill Miguel Romero? Given the remote location, detectives know that the chances of finding a witness are slim.
The area is ranch-style homes. They could be anywhere from 5 to 10 acres. It's very sparsely populated. And gunshots up there are somewhat common.
We did talk to some of the local neighbors that said they heard the gunshot but didn't think anything of it. It's an area that wouldn't be surprising to hear gunshots, hunters, recreational shooting.
While the gunshots didn't garner much attention, detectives do find one witness.
I received a phone call from a neighbor who told me that he heard that we were out canvassing the area and he heard that somebody had been found shot to death. It was then that he realized what he had seen just prior to that may or may not be of any interest to us.
He and his wife and his child went down to get something to eat down on the highway. They came back, and like I said, the area is very desolate. Everybody knows everybody.
He knows all of the vehicles around there. And I recall him saying anybody that's there is either lost or doesn't belong.
They turned down the dirt road that leads to their home. When they pulled onto that road, they saw a car parked on the side of the road that they almost hit. He's driving a big truck, and it was a little Scion, a little gunmetal gray Scion.
He knew the year of the vehicle and everything. I was impressed on his knowledge of vehicles. There was no doubt in his mind what it was.
The model of the vehicle isn't all that stood out to the man.
He said there was a male seated in the driver's seat, and he had blue latex gloves on. He was able to see the blue latex gloves because he was holding onto the steering wheel.
He thought it was odd that the driver, who he described as a male Hispanic, was wearing rubber gloves.
And there was a female in the right front passenger seat. She had black hair.
The man says that although the scene was strange, he kept on driving and didn't alert authorities.
He just let it go. He went home, started a barbecue, was outside, heard gunshots.
For investigators, the tip holds hope. If they can find the vehicle the man has described, they might also find Miguel's killer.
We're thinking that's going to be our murder suspect in that Scion.
Coming up, detectives learn that Miguel had secrets.
She found out that he was having an affair.
And an entire family vanishes without a trace.
They were here.
Los Angeles County investigators have learned that on the day of Miguel Romero's murder, a gray Toyota Scion containing a male and female passenger was spotted in the vicinity of the crime scene. Detectives believe that finding that vehicle and its two occupants might be the key to finding Miguel's killer.
30 to 45 minutes prior to hearing gunshots, he sees this car that he's never seen before. Everybody knows everybody in this neighborhood, and you see this car that's unusual.
Some of this newfound information. Kareem tells police that, for the most part, she and Miguel had a happy marriage.
He was a good husband. You know, we had our differences like any marriages, and we have our problems.
In fact, Kareem admits that a recent revelation had shaken their marriage to its core.
She mentioned that she found out that he was having an affair.
According to Kareem, for the last several weeks, she had suspected Miguel might be cheating on her. So she decided to do a little detective work of her own.
I decided to buy that recording device, and I put it in my car. He was driving my car at that time to go to work. I put it in a place where obviously he couldn't see it.
Kareem says she got confirmation of her suspicions. In a conversation with his cousin, Miguel admitted to having an affair. For Kareem, the real surprise came when Miguel revealed whom he was having an affair with. His 40-year-old business partner and family friend, Ana Mancio.
He said it himself that he had been in that relationship with Ana for about 4 years already. That's when I found out that it was Ana. Obviously, I'm in shock because I never thought that it was gonna be her.
Kareem says she confronted Miguel 2 days later.
I had recorded it on my phone and I played it to him. He just kind of smiled and was surprised. And, you know, we had an argument about it.
She basically told him, you need to end it now.
With the threat of losing his wife, Kareem says Miguel agreed to end the affair.
I thought that we were heading in the right direction for our marriage to come to what at one point was. And I thought that we were gonna be okay.
Kareem, however, wanted to make sure that Ana Mancio got the message that Miguel was now off limits.
She had sent a text message to Anna's phone, and during that text message, she had instructed Anna to stop seeing her husband.
Only it wasn't Anna who saw the text.
That text message was intercepted by Edwin.
Kareem tells police that Edwin Mancio then called her and left a voicemail.
She received a phone message from Edwin Mancio that her husband and his wife were acting like dogs, and they were having this affair, and they have made fools out of them.
According to Kareem, it didn't end there. Edwin also called Miguel.
They were talking, and I asked him who it was, and he said it was Edwin. I told him, what did he say? He said he's gonna kill me.
Edwin was livid. Not just that Miguel and Anna were having an affair, but that the affair threatened his standing as an elder in the church.
That made him so angry because he's highly respected in that church, and the fact that his wife was having an affair tarnished his reputation.
Kareem tells detectives that despite Edwin's clear threats, Miguel believed it would all eventually blow over.
My husband didn't really take it serious, I think. My husband wasn't the kind of person that he would get scared very easy. So he took it like whatever. He said he was gonna kill me.
However, with Miguel now dead, Kareem believes Edwin made good on those threats.
The one who had done this to my husband had to be Edwin. I could honestly say I didn't think of anyone else.
Based on her statement, detectives believe Kareem's telling the truth. They're also convinced she had nothing to do with her husband's death.
She was the one who found him. If she was responsible, she would have left. She wouldn't have remained there. I think she would have created some kind of alibi. We were able to justify everything that she gave us pretty early on to be able to clear her.
Edwin had threatened Miguel on the phone. He became the primary suspect.
Detectives head to the Mancio home in hopes of questioning Edwin. But when they arrive, they find that Edwin isn't home. In fact, no one is.
They split. Everybody's gone, the whole family. We tried to talk to some of the neighbors. Nobody really had anything to say about them other than they were here one day and they were gone the next.
Detectives put out an APB on the entire Mancio family. With the Mancios seemingly in the wind, detectives try to find a connection between Edwin and the Toyota Scion seen in the vicinity of the crime scene. A check of Edwin's driving record reveals something illuminating.
Edwin Manson had a ticket in Scion about a year prior, but the registered owner of the plate when we ran it was this Martha Ariana.
Who is Martha Ariana, and what connection does she have to Edwin Mancio? Could she be the mystery woman that was purportedly seen in the Toyota Scion the evening of the murder? Detectives pay Martha a visit and quickly determine Martha's connection to the Mancio family.
She's another member of the church, the Jehovah's Witness church, and that's how they all know each other. And she said, oh yeah, I got that car. The Mancio family wanted a car for their daughter, Scarlett, but they had bad credit, so they asked if I would get the car and they would make the payments. So it's their car.
Martha tells detectives she last heard from the Mancios on the night of the murder, April 28th.
She said that they received a call late one night saying that they had to leave for medical reasons, and the car was going to be left in Ontario Mills Mall for them to pick up.
According to Martha, her son retrieved the Scion from the mall the next day. She says they haven't seen or heard from the Mancios since.
At that point, they were cooperative and let us take the vehicle to have it processed with the crime lab.
Preliminary tests give detectives their first concrete evidence.
Gunshot residue was found on the headrest inside the vehicle, indicating that a gun had been fired within the vehicle or close proximity to that vehicle.
Processing it and finding the gunshot residue inside of it, that's our car.
Detectives double down on their efforts to find the Mancios by reaching out to their church family. Church members reveal that the Mancios' absence isn't a surprise to them. They had known they were leaving for weeks.
The members of the church said, yeah, they're down in Guatemala right now.
The story that we were hearing was that they had to go there because Edwin was sick and needed to go there for medical care. In fact, they had all contributed money to the family because of his alleged sickness, and they were trying to help them.
Detectives believe that Edwin's absence is more likely the result of fleeing a murder charge than seeking medical care.
They seemed very, very suspicious and pointed toward guilt.
Coming up, a twist that alters the entire scope of the investigation.
2 days prior to the murder, Edwin boarded that plane.
That really started the wheels of motion for us.
And an unexpected lead breaks the case wide open.
The Crime Stopper tip said that there's a note that has the directions to the
Antelope Valley, California, are desperate to locate Edwin Mancio and his family. Just days earlier, Edwin had allegedly learned of his wife Anna's affair with Miguel Romero. Now, Miguel is dead, and there's speculation that the Mancios have fled the country.
My partner and I were under the belief that they were hiding. The fact that they just fled their house seemed very, very suspicious.
With the hope of tracking them down, detectives subpoena phone records for the entire Mancio family.
It took a while for us to get the information that we needed on the cell phones. And with that, we didn't have enough to just go and conduct a search or write a search warrant for Edwin and Anna's residence.
While detectives wait for the phone records to come in, they continue to...
Crime Stoppers. The Crime Stopper tip said that there's a note in the Mancio house that has the directions to the murder site.
Based on the tip, detectives obtain a search warrant for the Mancio home.
The residence was on about an acre of land, so there was a lot of ground to cover. And that's where we found some expended casings. There was a lot of casings.
9mm casings, to be exact. The very same size of ammunition that police had recovered from the crime scene.
There was also a box, a gun box, for a Beretta 92F, and it was empty.
As it turns out, that gun doesn't belong to Edwin, but rather his wife.
There was a receipt from a gun store where Anna had purchased that gun.
Detectives also find a handwritten note on an envelope.
On the back of the envelope, it had the handwritten out directions: turn right on such and such a street, turn left here. It had Miguel Romero's name on it as well.
The note was in writing which appeared to be the same as Anna.
Between the purchase of the gun and the note in her handwriting, detectives are now questioning Anna's involvement.
That really started the wheels of motion for us. We started to think that Edwin and Anna had committed the murder together.
Detectives amp up their efforts to find the Mancios, who they believe may have fled to their native Guatemala.
We were able to check airline records. 2 days prior to the murder, Edwin boarded that plane. He used his passport, Guatemalan passport, to leave the country.
This new information suggests that Edwin couldn't be Miguel's killer.
Once we discovered that Edwin had left the United States 2 days prior to the murder, it really kind of created a little confusion.
Once they obtain Anna Mancio's phone records, detectives learn that Anna was at home in Antelope Valley in the hours leading up to the murder.
At about 4:10, she's using her home tower.
But as the hour of Miguel's murder nears, Anna's phone moves closer to the remote desert roadside where he was killed.
From about 4:15 through about 5:37, Anna Mancio is using the tower that's closest to the crime scene.
Detectives trace Anna's movements from that rural dirt road back to her home and then to the Ontario Mills shopping mall where the Mancio's Toyota Scion was later found. After that, Anna and her cell phone make a beeline due south.
On April 29th, Anna Mancio's phone is hitting towers near the Mexican border, the San Diego and Tijuana border.
If Anna was the woman in the Scion and Edwin was out of the country, who was the man with her the night Miguel Romero was murdered?
We wanted to contact every single person that she talked to that day. There was one number that we couldn't identify.
When detectives obtain records for this new cell phone, They discover that it shadows the movements of Anna's phone on the day of the murder almost to a T.
We've noticed that pretty much we're using the same towers around the same time frame.
Detectives believe whoever owned that phone was Anna's accomplice and the driver of the Scion. The phone, however, isn't attached to a name. With the hope of finding out who it belongs to, detectives go back to Anna and Edwin's church community.
I said, hey, would you happen to know whose phone number this is? And they said, oh, it doesn't look familiar to me. I go, would you mind punching it in and see if it comes up with anybody? So the person punched it in and it came up and it goes, oh, it's Ricardo Pesch's phone number. That's when we're like, well, who's Ricardo Pesch? And that's when we found out that he's a member of that church and he's been missing since the Mancio family has been missing.
Similar to Miguel Romero, Ricardo Pesch is a well-known and much beloved handyman in the area.
We know that he is a younger guy, probably 20 to 25 years old. He is from Mexico. He was a member of the church for 5 years. He's everybody's handyman, really good kid, they say.
He kind of jumped around and lived different places. He was very transient, so to speak.
Friends say that the Mancios had taken a particular shine to Ricardo.
When Edwin started doing more handyman work, I knew that Ricardo would go and be his sidekick all the time.
Based on his phone records, detectives believe that Ricardo was the man seen driving the gray Scion with Anna.
We believe that Ricardo Pesch was possibly the driver and Ana Mancio was the right front passenger.
Detectives believe that the picture of what happened to Miguel Romero on the evening of April 28th is finally coming into focus. What they don't know is why Ricardo Pesch and Ana Mancio would conspire with one another to kill Miguel.
Ricardo was really tight with Edwin. He did everything with Edwin.
Coming up, with two clear-cut suspects now in their crosshairs, what detectives discover next heightens their concerns.
She was buying another Beretta 92F.
And a motive for the murder begins to take shape.
He did not want anything to do with her anymore. Her family.
15. Detectives in rural Little Rock, California were desperate to find 40-year-old murder suspect Ana Mancio. Based on cell phone data, it's believed that Anna crossed the border into Mexico on April 29th, the day after she and her presumed accomplice, Ricardo Pesch, gunned down Anna's lover, Miguel Romero. Once in Mexico, Anna continued on to Guatemala, where she presumably met up with her husband, Edwin.
We just assumed they were down there in Guatemala, and we were continually checking with the FBI to find out if they were able to locate him, but it went cold.
They didn't know where they were. You hear about, how people fly away and never get caught.
Then, in July 2017, more than 2 years after Miguel Romero's murder, investigators get the news they've long waited to hear.
I got a call from an officer from Orlando Police Department. Anna was trying to purchase a firearm at a gun show in Orlando. She went willingly. She waived extradition and was here within a week.
Through authorities in Florida, California detectives learn that after entering back into the U.S. from Guatemala, Anna and her family took up where they'd left off.
She had the same name. She relinquished her California driver's license and got a Florida with the same name. She was a real estate agent living in Orlando. Had been there over a year, living life. Edwin was doing construction. The daughters, one of them was working at The Habit, and then the other one was working at Waterworld.
They told me Anna was caught. It was hard in the moment to process. It seemed impossible at one time that it was going to happen.
My sister called me. She said they got her. And I was relieved. Not for myself, but because of her.
On May 22nd, 2018, Anna's trial begins in Lancaster, California. Prosecutors allege that days before Miguel's murder, Anna's husband Edwin abruptly left the United States for Guatemala, not because of his health, but because he was angry over Anna's affair with Miguel Romero.
He did not want anything to do with her anymore, so her family was falling apart, and her family was everything.
According to prosecutors, Anna believed that the only way she could make things right with Edwin was to prove, in the most brutal terms possible, that her affair with Miguel was over once and for all.
I believe that she was in love with him. So by my husband leaving her alone on this, I think she felt betrayed.
Prosecutors claim that in order to exact her revenge on Miguel, Anna turned to Ricardo Pesch.
Anna was the mastermind, and she convinced Ricardo to help her.
As far as we can tell, Pesch was very close to the Mancillo family, but there's very little information that we have that would be able to confirm what Pesch's thought process was.
Prosecutors say that on the day of the murder, Anna convinced Ricardo to use his burner cell phone in order to pose as a potential customer for Miguel and his growing agribusiness.
Anna knew the location to take him to that's very secluded. She probably knew there were no cameras. There's no neighbors that are going to be looking out, and lured him into that area.
Prosecutors say Anna and Ricardo then waited for Miguel to show up with his feed delivery. At around 5:45 p.m., he arrived.
Once he was there and he was waiting, she pulled up in the Scion, surprised him while he was seated in his car with his seatbelt on still,
and returned to Anna's home where they retrieved Anna's daughters. Then they drove the Scion and Anna's Forerunner to the Ontario Mills shopping mall.
They loaded up into one car. They left the Scion there. They called Martha, "Hey, your Scion's parked here. We have the key hidden under the bumper. Come get it." And the four of them took off, and last known about 1 o'clock, crossing over the Mexican border.
Prosecutors meticulously back up their timeline with Anna and Ricardo's phone records.
I was on the stand for a very long time. The exhibits I provided helped prove that Anna and Pesch were at the crime scene when the incident occurred.
Anna's defense team argues that prosecutors have merely proved that Anna and Ricardo's phones were at the crime scene, not that Anna and Ricardo were there.
The reality is the defense counsel, in light of all of the circumstantial evidence, had very few cards to play with.
On June 5th, the jury announces they have reached a decision.
The jury deliberated for a day and a half, and they returned unanimous guilty of murder, and she was sentenced to 26 years to life.
I was happy because there is, at the end, some kind of justice being done for my husband. Unfortunately, this will not bring him back, but at least she's paying for what she had done, destroying our family, destroying her family.
Whether or not Anna will again see life outside of prison one day is unknown, as is the location of her assumed accomplice, Ricardo Pesch.
It's unknown where in Mexico he was dropped off. He's either in a shallow grave somewhere, or he's hiding out down in the Yucatan. She had this affair, and they had the perfect life, and it was all ruined.
The most tragic part of it is that she found that this was her only way out, is to actually kill somebody off. To have that heart to do that to another human being is unfathomable for me.